Hello, this is Professor Chambly, and I'm here to wrap up a few things on week 7. One is the import alert. I think you all didn't have any trouble with that concept. It serves as basically the equivalent of an injunction, especially if that's the only supplier a company has. FDA can put an import alert on a product that has the appearance of noncompliance. FDA does not have to prove it. Now, it can be arbitrary and capricious, but the appearance of noncompliance gives FDA a lot of discretion. And once a U.S. company has an import alert placed on it, oftentimes it can't make product. So it is important to avoid them whenever possible, to have backup suppliers from other sources, and to communicate quickly with FDA when this happens. We talked a little bit about import for export and whether our company could take advantage of that. A product that's imported for export is identified that way when it comes in the first time. It's identified that it needs some further processing before it goes to another country for sale. FDA wants the jobs and the business, so it will allow that product in. The company usually has to pay a bond to make sure it doesn't get diverted into the United States. So for our situation, since the product wasn't identified as import for export when it first arrived, it was not eligible. FDA doesn't generally allow companies to take their adulterated product and ship it anywhere. Once it's adulterated, it can't be in interstate commerce at all, so it can't be shipped anywhere. And also the optics of sending non-compliant drugs to other countries is not good. I mean, it's one thing if it's approved in that other country but not here, that's one thing. But if we're sending poor countries dirty products, we're not going to be welcome anywhere. So I wanted to address import for export. The last question was recalls. Recalls are for marketed products. We only talked about that a little bit. Now, in our scenario, the widget had been marketed separately before our company started using it. So that would have been subject to recall back from Seneco, which was a real company that really distributed product that wasn't sterile and had to recall it and got a warning letter for not doing that. So once that product was marketed for anything, then when it was found to be violative, it would normally be subject to recall. Now, for a product that is implanted already, it's really unusual for FDA to have the recall constitute getting the product back. In that case, what it might be is increased monitoring for the patient to make sure that they don't have any adverse effects. And in this case, since it was already implanted, you would think that the effects were identified right away. So hopefully none of our patients got a product that wasn't adequately sterilized. So it would be recalled, but the recall would constitute a notification to the users that they need to do something, like follow up with patients, but almost never explanted. Now, the drug that we were talking about recalling might be subject to a similar kind of recall situation. The drugs with the black spots were the ones that would have been subject to recall, but they were all used. So again, FDA might demand the company publish a recall, or it might demand the company do something, but it wouldn't be called a recall because that is investigative. And if it did something, it would again send a notification to ask that the patients who might have received those lots be carefully monitored for side effects. Now, in this case, a lot of them wouldn't be alive anymore, so that complicates the issue. On one hand, it might interfere with approval of the drug, except they did figure out how to get rid of the black spots, although they never identified what they were. So any lots of the drug being manufactured at that point might not be subject to the recall or to the action at all. Now, the drug was investigational. Investigational products aren't recalled. They're supposed to be in control of the manufacturer at all times as part of the clinical trial, so they would be expected to get them back. Now, how about the products that are eventually come together and are packaged together to go to the clinical site? That is investigational. So again, that would not be a recall. It would be like a stock recovery instead. So the company would be going back to collect those, but not for their drug on the basis that the accompanying widget might not be sterile. So there's a whole decision tree to be made here about what to do with the widget, which is recalled, what to do with the drug, where you might have stock recovery, except there isn't any of the drug with black spots left, and the combination, which Seneca would have been recalling because the widget itself is commercialized. But the distributor, in this case, our company, would be doing a stock recovery of the investigational package. So I did want to make that a little convoluted to make you think about it. I wanted to remind you that the only way you found out it's not a recall was by reading the definitions. If you read the definitions in the FDA regulation, you might be the only person in the room that has read them. And if you can show your management the definition, you'll get credibility. And sometimes if the definition doesn't include your product, you'll get a pat on the back as well. Just say we're off the hook. We're not included in the scope or the definition. So don't forget to do that. All right. Well, now we're going to dive into week 8, the last week. Speaking of convoluted things, there's a whole bunch of relatively new law about free speech and talking about your approved and unapproved products. So let's dive into that. Let me know in the discussion board here whether you have any questions about week 7. Thanks. Couple other things. Send me your draft final paper if you want me to look at it first. I will also consider looking at it later. If you send it to me on time, I can still give you feedback on it. And also the course evaluations are due, and I'm mortified to know that not everything was in the right place for your class when I came back from my hiatus. And I've fixed those as I've gone, but I want you to know your feedback made the class better these 8 weeks, and they'll continue to make it better for me and for the next group. So thank you in advance for your participation. Okay, I'll see you on the discussion board.